Canada's new federal budget invests in housing and poverty reduction here at home. However, there are some who are expressing concern that the budget also cuts $2.7 billion from international aid over the next 4 years. So joining us to discuss this is Laura Solberg. She is the executive director of Kentro Christian Network. She's in Vancouver. Welcome to Bridge City News, Laura.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a joy to be here.
Wonderful. Okay, so before we start chatting about the budget, tell us what your organization is all about.
Yeah, many Canadians donate to, organizations that are doing charitable work both here at home and internationally. And I think that they hope that all those organizations are working together and kind of in alignment. Our job is to kind of network with those organizations, make sure that they have opportunities to learn with and from each other, share resources, work together when it makes sense to do so, and have a unified voice on the issues that are important to them. So we're a network of over 70 Christian organizations that are addressing material poverty, either here in Canada or internationally.
Okay. Now, Laura, I believe your concern is that cutting foreign aid will reduce funding for overseas charities that rely on this to help reduce poverty and meet the needs of the poor. Is that right?
Yeah, that's definitely a big part of it. Those that rely particularly on government funding, this will obviously have a direct impact on their revenue. But I think something that maybe not a lot of people realize is that the money that Canada invests in international aid actually has an impact on all of the work that we do internationally because of the enabling environment that it creates. So when we cut foreign aid, it's not only those that directly receive the government funding that are impacted, it's every organization that's working internationally as well.
hmm can you give us an idea as to what degree charitable organizations rely on government money as compared to donations coming in?
Yeah, that's a great question. And because a lot of organizations actually have a very significant mix of that. Some rely more on government than others. When amongst our membership, and that we have about 55 organizations that work specifically internationally, there are none that completely rely on government funding, but there are some that don't have government funding as part of their budget either. And so, like I said, even those that aren't relying on government funding, this does impact them because even though it's not directly related to their revenue, it impacts the way that they're able to work internationally and the environment that it creates.
Hmm. And you are suggesting that these cutbacks affect Canada's reputation negatively.
Yeah, I think, I've done some traveling, and anybody who's done some traveling has probably known that for a long time, having a little Canadian flag on your backpack or your luggage is a good thing. I was even traveling last year, and I knew an American there who did that, because of the way that they were received as, pretending to be a Canadian in that case. I think
Yeah.
that says a lot about how the world sees Canada as a country. And that is in no small part, you know, due to the way that Canada has invested in international aid. And I think when we start to cut those things or claw back some of that money, there is going to be an impact on how Canada is perceived internationally, both, on us as individuals, but even, the way that we put our Canadian flag and are proud to be Canadian when we go traveling in different places, because we're not as visible to them investing in their countries. And in some cases, actually, what is visible is the retreat back to ourselves at their expense.
Yeah. I guess there is also the argument against foreign aid that we should take care of Canada's own poverty needs first, and that it's morally wrong to put Canadian taxpayers into deeper debt in order to help the needy in other nations. What do you say
Yeah,
to that?
I feel like that is actually such a great question because I think it speaks directly to the compassion that Canadians do feel, and the tension that they feel when they're surrounded by so many needs, both in Canada and at home. And I think what I like about that question and the good news that I have is that it's not an either or. Taking care of Canadians is vitally important. And healthy investment internationally actually is good for Canadians in the long run, in the medium, not even just the long run, but the medium term. Investing internationally $1 internationally invested brings back over $1, almost $1.20 in trade later on, and also $1 invested internationally towards like development and peace building can save us up to $60 in military spending later on as well. And so while those budget cuts in the short term, they look really appealing to solve some short-term issues, but in the not so medium and long term, they actually are not helpful for Canadians. And so that's why I say like it's not an either or. I think the smart use of Canada's money can actually maintain both of those things very well.
Okay, interesting. I guess there are some that would also, argue that some of these funds go to nations with unscrupulous political leaders who use it for their own gain rather than for the needy. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, again, I think it speaks to Canadians really wanting their money to be used well and to align with their values. And I'd have to say, in response to that, with the combined experience of, like I say, over 55 organizations in our network that do work internationally, and many, many more beyond that, both Christian and non, that's not been our experience at all. The international sector takes really seriously accountability to their donors, whether that's government funds, their taxpayers, or private donations. And they have really, really rigorous monitoring and accountability systems built in. And I would have to say that the Christian organizations that receive government funding, they've done some really deep work on how to navigate those things and make sure that their programming is implemented in ways that align with their Christian values. And so they look for ways that they can partner with government funds where that alignment is and not where it doesn't exist.
Okay, no, that's interesting because, yeah, you mentioned viewers' values there, and some of them might have concerns how Canadian foreign aid funding at times is being used, or it might be going to fund projects that don't necessarily align with their values. Like, for example, if they were Orthodox Christian, right? So, like, for instance, funds being used to promote abortion or sex education or what have you overseas.
Yeah, and like I say, all of the Christian organizations that are within our network, and we include all of the big Christian organizational names that most Canadians can recognize, but also multiple smaller ones as well. They work really hard to maintain their Christian identity and have that flow through everything they do, whether it comes from their fundraising, their program design, their accountability to donors and back to government, to make sure that is in alignment with those values.
hmm so, what are you asking Canadians to do? Are you suggesting that they should ask their member of parliament to push for an increase in foreign aid spending?
I think what Canadians, it has to, I think, to speak to the general sense of sort of fear and scarcity. Canadians, we exist in a country that actually has so much to give, and has a reputation of not only being generous but actually modeling their power well in the world. And so, taking a step back and just recognizing that we don't have to be worried about giving too much. We're all aware of the challenges that we face with budgets, and what we're advocating for is just that Canada do its fair share. And so communicating to your elected officials that you want Canada to do its fair share and you do care about what happens beyond our borders. And beyond that, you recognize that what happens beyond our borders has an impact here in Canada as well. So not only does it align with our values, but practically it's just a good investment.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. Are you also asking Canadians to ask MPs to improve government oversight to ensure this money gets to the right places? Or do you think that they're already doing a pretty good job at that?
I think that honestly, they already are doing a pretty good job of that, but we all our sort of our work involves all of this monitoring and evaluation all the time, and it's very focused on continuous improvement, and that goes all the way up to the top levels of Global Affairs Canada. And so there's always room for folks to be advocating for good use of funds and understanding the accountability mechanisms that are already there. A little bit of education and some good relationships make a huge difference in making sure that your funds, whether it's your tax money that's going to the government or your donations, are being used in ways that you can feel comfortable with.
Yeah. How generous do you think Canadians are when it comes to donating to charities who help fight poverty overseas?
Canadians are so generous. They are so generous, and you can tell that they can when you look at the donor dollars that are being used by our member organizations. you can tell that Canadians actually really do care about what is going on internationally. They care for their neighbors. And I think the challenge is when we start feeling the pinch here at home, and start feeling scared about what's going on, it can be really easy to just look inward, and start pitting the needs of people here at home against those internationally. And that's why I keep on going back to, it doesn't have to be that either or choice. Good use of money actually can do both. And we can be responsible with the power that we do have by utilizing it well and continuing to be generous.
Yeah. How much of a difference does it make when more funds come in for NGOs, non-government organizations who work with the poor?
It makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference. It allows them to be able to respond to the needs on the ground as they occur, and the changes that are happening in our world means that organizations do need to be responsive. It allows them to listen to their local partners and direct the programming in the ways that is going to be the most effective on the ground.
You were saying Canadians are so generous. Not everybody is, obviously, but any suggestions for viewers as to how to change those mindsets on making generosity more of a priority?
I think having conversations about generosity around the table. I mean, we all like to think of ourselves as generous people, I think, and not everybody is, for a long time, people were learning those lessons maybe in church or through different community events and things like that. And those things, the more separate we are, the harder it is to have those conversations and to instill those values in generations coming up. And so having those conversations about generosity with your family, with your friends, but also just getting to know the people that are working in those organizations as well. Nothing can beat a personal relationship with people who, are working in those types of situations that you want to have an impact in.
Thanks so much for being with us today, Laura, and sharing your insight with us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Laura Solberg is the executive director of Kentro Christian Network.